Hart, appreciate the time. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, exciting day all of a sudden out of nowhere.
Hey, you know what? Before we get to all that, I just got to ask you, what's the traffic been like on the site over, I don't know, like the last 3-4 weeks or so?
Pretty good, pretty good. Although the last week I was thinking, oh, it's slowing down, and I'd sure love some news, and then like, bam, it all of a sudden happened today. So it's been good, yeah.
Well, that being said, and I'm not going to get mad at you for taking the bag one day, but let's keep the website going. All right, let's keep the website going. It's of vital importance to all of us right now, especially today.
I've been working on this site for 7 years, so to have more people using it and seeing it, that's kind of the dream. So okay. I don't see me doing anything to not make it a public site.
All right. So, well, thank you for the time today. I mean, there's a lot of different places I guess we could start. First of all, just your thought on a National Hockey League team dropping 2 offer sheets against the same team at the same time.
I've probably read, I don't know, dozens of articles suggesting that over the years, right? It's a common thing in message boards and on Twitter, and to actually see it happen, I'm impressed. Like it makes a lot of sense. Not just the dollars, but the terms on both of them, like a 2-year deal. You know, Broberg, would you sign him for that deal? Like if it was 5 years, of course, right? Like that, you could get a good value, but he's going to have to do pretty well to live up to that for just a 2-year contract, right? And same with Holloway. So it was very, very smart. First thing that came to mind was if Holland was still the GM, I don't know if his buddy Armstrong would be doing that.
That's, you know what? We were just talking about if it would have been different if Holloway was the GM and the relationship between those two guys. That's actually a pretty good point, Hart. But they did. He's not the GM anymore. They did decide to pull the trigger on it. What did you think of the value that they gave? Like, we've had a lot of people chiming in today being like, well, there's no way Broberg's worth that much. I know you have comparables and stuff, but what did you think of the value, and what do you think is the best plan of attack here for the Edmonton Oilers right now on how to keep these guys in and still fit in under the cap?
Well, if you're just going to look at what their net contract should be on a 2-year deal, that's more money than they should get on a 2-year deal. But to St. Louis's credit, like they put it right at the point where the compensation isn't really that exciting, right? A 2nd or a 3rd round pick, and the dollar amount though is high for what they're worth. So I mean, they would be overpaid, I would think. Based on the evidence we have so far, they're overpaid. Now, can they live up to it, and can they outperform that contract? Like, of course, if it's possible, but you're counting on them to take a big step forward. Like I said, I think that's why the 2-year term is pretty genius. Like if it was longer term at those numbers, I think the Oilers think, well, yeah, we're tight for the next year or two, but that could end up being a good deal. It like, especially, you know, Broberg is going to have to be a top 4 or 5 defenseman to justify that number. And Holloway is going to have to score, you know, like 10, 12, 15 goals and get consistent minutes to live up to that. So those are, it was a very smart amount that they, both the amount and the term was very smart. And for the Oilers, it's going to be tight. I mean, again, they don't have to do the same thing for both. They could match one and let the other one go. But like they can make it work. The most obvious thing is Kane on LTIR and trade CC. I mean, then that kind of solves the issue. But even without a trade, I mean, Kane on LTIR, they could waive and send down kind of 3 guys and make it work. Like, you know, you could pick the guys, but like a Brown, maybe a guy like Perry or someone that's
Perry could go down, right?
Yeah. And another guy, right? Like I model it out. I got with sending 3 guys down and then using a guy like Lavoie as your 12th forward and Kane on LTR, you can get within. I got him within like 30 or 60 grand they have 60 grand of cap space, which again is fine in the short term. But if Kane does come back, you know, that's another issue you're gonna have to deal with. But you know, like Louis Lamoriello always says, if you have time, use it. I don't see. First of all, they shouldn't make a decision for the next few days. They might as well take their time, see what else is out there. They have 7 days. Again, to me, the obvious thing is trade CC and then Kane on LTR. You still have to do something if Kane comes back, but you have a lot. It's a lot less daunting. But now maybe I'm sure they know what they knew what the market was for CC. I wonder if that changes now that teams know they're a little tighter to do something. But also they can match and you know, they don't have to be cap compliant until the opening day of the season, right? So they can be 10% over the cap in the off season. So like I said, if you have time, use it. They can match and still figure it out over the next month or two.
I'm very kind of young with the site and how it works. I like the layout. It's learning something new a little bit. But is there anything else you can tell us about how can you is there any sort of fantasy seeing if adding a player, subtracting a player, like building your own roster? Can you do anything like that on the site at all?
Yeah, we launched our Puck GM feature about a month and a half ago now. So if you just click Puck GM on the top there, you can create your Oilers roster. So that's where I just modeled out. I sent a few guys down and looked to see how to make them put Kane on LTIR, look to see how they're cap compliant. So I think the Puck GM tool is what you're looking for. And most of the rosters I see created today are Oilers rosters and a few St. Louis rosters. So yeah, that's the place to check it all out.
Yeah, I did it, and I just traded Draisaitl for Huberdeau.
Great idea. Cass, I think Gager was echoing there, but Hart's good to go. Hart, I want to ask you. So you can go 10% over, and then if the plan is to put Kane on the LTIR, you have to be cap compliant opening night with Kane included in it, and then when he explain that to us on opening night. Yeah. Yes.
So there's two ways to start being on LTIR when the season starts. The first is you submit your roster being under the cap without the player on LTIR. So you're a cap compliant team. The player's not on LTIR. Then the next day you put the player on LTIR, and then the amount that you can exceed the cap is the injured player's cap hit minus the cap space. So that's why we see some teams. They'll make moves and send guys up and down right before the opening roster, and maybe they'll be $100 under the cap. So if the Oilers did that, they put Kane on LTIR. Now they can exceed the cap by his $5.125 million less $100. I don't see the Oilers being able to go that method now if they were to match these offer sheets. But when it was looking like maybe they would sign them to 1-year deals, that was certainly a path the Oilers could have gone to put Kane on LTIR. The other option is you start with the player on LTIR when you submit your roster. And when you do that, you can submit a roster that's over the cap by up to that injured player's cap hit.
Okay.
But the trick is however much you're over when you submit, that now is how much you can exceed the cap. So let's just say again, this was some scenarios that the Oilers are facing before these offer sheets, but they could submit a roster that was only $3 million over the cap with Kane on LTIR. Then they can only exceed the cap by $3 million. They cannot go up to 5.1 for Kane's cap hit. So again, that's why you see players do some roster moves. Sometimes they sign a player just to have a specific cap hit number to get them over the cap by a certain amount. So however much you're over when you submit, that is your new amount you can go to. And if that isn't Kane's 5.1 million, you lose that difference kind of forever. That's gone. So with the Oilers now, with these offer sheets, if they were to match both, you have to assume they got to go with that second method. So their goal would be to build a roster to start the season that is up to 5.125 million over the cap. That would be their path.
Over the cap, and then that's how much they're allowed. So do you think that's if they match both these guys, is that the likely scenario? That's pretty much. That
would be the only way, unless they trade a CC and do something else. Yeah. And that's in when the Oilers had Clefbaum and Smith in pastures. That was generally the method that they went. Because again, you had a guy like Clefbaum was 4.1 million. So again, it's hard to get under the cap when you have a guy like that on your cap sheet. So they're used to doing that. They've done it before. And that's why a couple of years ago, I remember Ryan McLeod, I think he signed for like 798 or something, like a very specific number. That was to fit him in so that they would exceed the cap by exactly the amount of the injured players that were going on in LTIR.
Still all confusing to me, but I luckily.
So here's to simplify it now. Okay. If you look on PuckPedia, you see like with those contracts, they're 7.225
I see that. Yeah, they're 7
over the cap.
Yep. Okay.
So they have to make it so that they're only 5.125 million over the cap. That's the simple way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's to start the season. What happens if that's what they do and then Kane comes back halfway through the season? Well, you have to get under the cap. You have to be cap compliant to remove a guy from LTIR, right? So that's why even if they don't make a trade and they waive a Brown and a Perry and a Stetcher and they just get under the cap with Kane on LTIR, that's great. But if in January Kane's healthy, ready to go, and nobody else is injured, now you got to shed $5 million to get under the cap, and that's going to be even harder to do than in the offseason.
Okay.
So LTIR helps you the most if you know the guy is out for the whole season, like
Yeah.
a Clothbaum or a Smith.
Like coming back
the
to
guy's
playoffs.
coming back partway through.
Yeah.
It's sort of helpful, but you still have another shoe to drop at some point in the season.
Okay, so just last one on Kane, just to clarify with all the stuff that you've laid out for us. And I'm going to say this is for other people, but it's selfishly for me.
You're asking for a friend.
Does Kane, do you think, does Kane have to be on the LTIR for them to be able to match these players?
Without any other trades, he would have to be on LTIR
Okay.
when they submit the opening
Okay.
roster.
All right.
And they would have to waive some other players too.
Yeah. Okay.
Like there's basically 3 players that you would expect to be on the roster would have to be waived, plus Kane on LTIR.
Plus, he has to be on the LTIR. So, all
If
right.
they don't make any trades.
Well, I think
That's the asterisk. If
okay.
they don't make any trades.
you might get a couple of messages from me later this afternoon. We'll just throw it out there. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Okay, man. Well, appreciate you popping by and keep up the great work with PuckPedia, man.